The vice president gave the assurance in New Akwa Ibom State Capitol while declaring open a two-day retreat for the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. On his part, the president of the Nigerian Senate, Godswill Akpabio, assures of the National Assembly's commitment to a better Nigeria.
We must come together to correct the errors of the past. We face a collective action. There was almost erosion of hope in the governance.
Members of the Trade Union Congress, TUC, are threatening to embark on an indefinite industrial action in Lagos State over the continuous suspension of the activities of one of its affiliates, the Road Transport Employers Association of Nigeria. Speaking at a news conference in Abuja, President of the Trade Union Congress, Mr. Festus Osifo, says the union will begin with a mass protest in Lagos State on Monday, as all correspondences with the state government have failed to address the issues, with borders on a court ruling, which he says reversed the suspension that was handed down by the state government in 2022. According to Mr. Osifo, the union will be left with no other option than to direct its members to down tools if the protest on Monday fails to compel the government to comply with the court ruling.
In order for us to carry out a successful protest in Lagos on Monday next week, we have informed the DG of DSS, we have informed the IGP, we have also informed the National Security Advisor. The reason is that we want them to provide us with adequate security.
Ahead of the November 11 governorship election in Kogi State, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, is urging the people of Kogi State to vote for Labour Party in the forthcoming poll. Unveiling the party's governorship candidate for the election, Mr. Adejo Okeme in Lokoja, the Kogi State capital, Mr. Obi explains that Labour Party will change the narrative of the state from poverty to economic and infrastructure development.
Kogi is now the highest producer of cassava. They want cassava everywhere in the world. They can produce yam, they can produce everything because there's a vast land. But there's poverty everywhere in Kogi State.
Over to Imo State, where the youth wing of the Ohanese Indigbo have declared support for the second-term bid of Governor Hope Uzodinma. The group led by Mr. Chukuma Okbalezoku made this declaration during a visit to the governor at the government house in Owerri, the state capital. He lauded the governor for his giant stride in infrastructure and his contributions to the development of the state in the last 3.5 years. In his response, the governor expressed his gratitude to the youth, noting that the role of the youth in nation building cannot be overemphasized.
I'm very happy, and there's no gainsaying on emphasizing on the need to recognize and encourage our youth population.
Let's begin with the first leg of our conversation tonight. It's officially a week of election tribunal judgments, but today didn't quite produce any governorship upset, as the Plateau State Election Petition Tribunal sitting in Jos, the capital, affirmed the election of Mr. Caleb Mutfwang of the People's Democratic Party as governor and dismissed a petition filed by Mr. Nintawe Uwada of the All Progressives Congress, the APC. For delivering the unanimous judgment, Justice Sunday Oloron dismissed all three grounds filed by the petitioner as lacking in merit. Now, those are scenes just right after that court judgment. The court particularly dismissed the claims that the PDP lacked structure, holding that the party had a valid Congress on September the 25th, 2021. Well, here's what the petitioner, that's the APC lawyer, had to say. Take a listen.
On behalf of the petitioners, that is Dr. Nintawe Iwada Goshwe and the APC, is that this is the first bus stop. There are other bus stops. We appeal to our citizens and supporters to be calm, to be peaceful, and to have hope, because obviously we're in a judicial system that encourages appeals, and you are all aware that in Nigeria, sometimes decisions of lower courts are upturned in the appellate courts. That is the hope of the petitioners, because it has happened several times in the past. We are very, very optimistic that at the end of the day, that is, at the end of the appellate process, justice will be served. So this is to let everybody know that all hope is not lost. The first bus stop has been passed. We are going to the next bus stop that is filing an appeal to the Court of Appeal, where we are sure that they will take a more in-depth look at all the facts and the law.
Well, let's now speak to a man who, in legal parlance, is described as the respondent, winner of the election, and now winner of the tribunal case. We're joined on the program tonight by Governor Caleb Mutfwang, the governor of Plateau State. He joins us virtually from Jos this evening. Well, it's good to have you on the program, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Kayode. Good evening, Nigerians.
Well, many may not know that you're a lawyer yourself, but it's a different ballgame entirely when you're the one being defended in court rather than defending someone. So tell us, how are the nerves now that the judgment is out?
Thank you. I am sure if you have a correspondent on ground, he will tell you that today is a day of joy and rejoicing on the plateau. He will tell you that today Plateau people are going to sleep with their two eyes closed because justice has been served. The votes they put together on the 18th of March has been validated today. I want to give glory to the Almighty God. I want to thank the people of Plateau State. I want to also thank the courage of their lordships who sat on this panel. I want to tell you that today, the elements on the plateau, the stars and the people, they are all gathered together, singing for joy, because we are persuaded that this is the right thing that has been done.
Indeed, and those are images sent in by our correspondent in Plateau State, essentially covering all of the angles of this. But still on this case, a lot of people may have expected it to go the way of the cases of a number of PDP lawmakers whose elections were nullified as a result of what the court called a lack of structure by the PDP. So what is different this time around? Because it looks like it's still the major crux of your case, but a different outcome.
Thank you, Kayode. You would recall that before some of my National Assembly and State Assembly members were thrown out supposedly for lack of structure by the PDP. Panel 1 had already upheld the elections of the Senate Minority Leader and other members of the National Assembly because ab initio, to anybody who is genuine, anybody who is fair, anybody who is honest, he knows that that leg of the petition by the APC and any other party for that matter is not only mischievous, it is simply a waste of time and energy because they know the truth. And it will amaze you to know that one of the leading lawyers of the APC was one of the leading lawyers in the PDP who actually defended the fact that PDP had a structure at the lower rungs of the judiciary in other cases that we went through. It is shameful that it is now that the same person who did not have his way in the PDP turns around to be campaigning for APC, and he was a deputy running mate to another party in the last election, but he now has the audacity to be able to come out and say PDP has no structure. But I want to assure you that the cases are there for anybody to see. And what the petitioners have done is what the tribunal has rightly called, in line with precedent, that they were nothing but meddlesome interlopers. And I'm glad that today the judiciary has spoken with a strong voice.
You know, lawyers would always say that the court, in its wisdom, came to this decision. So is it a case of when it favors you, you accept the judgment naturally, but when it doesn't, then you see that there are flaws in the judgment? Because it's the same judiciary that pronounced the judgment that favored you and also pronounced the ones that didn't favor the lawmakers, but at the federal and state levels for the PDP in the state.
Thank you, Kayode. Their lordships in the panel that said PDP had no structure would have to answer as the matter goes up to the higher rungs of the judiciary, because by now, every citizen, enlightened citizen of Nigeria, knows that the Supreme Court has laid a precedent that where issues border on pre-election matters, on nominations of candidates, that another party cannot peep into what happened in another party. It's crystal clear. There is no, law is not rocket science. And that is why I will be advocating that lawyers who help their clients to take cases to court that they know ab initio is an abuse of court process, is a rape on precedent, they should be properly sanctioned. It's a waste of energy, it's a waste of resources, it's an unnecessary emotional stress on the citizenry. And I want to believe that by the time the appeals are heard, it will be clear that if 2 out of 3 panels on the plateau spoke in the same direction, that PDP has structure, it will be amazing to see how one odd judgment will be upheld. It will be against the rules of natural justice.
Well, the coming days, weeks, or perhaps months, of course, we'll speak to that one. I'm taking a look at the post you put up on X just right after that judgment. And in the last paragraph, and now we're moving on from the court case to governance, which is the bigger picture here. And you said that your government will become more proactive in the days to come, and with the programs that have been started, saying that you'll accelerate them and ensure that you move at the best speed that can be delivered. And I know that for a lot of people in your state, majority, they want that speed. In fact, the buzz phrase is hit the ground running. Well, you've hit the ground for over 3 months now. So let's talk about governance. And I think one of the first major issues when it comes to governance in your state is security. I mean, we'll talk about the vast resources, land, and the rest in the coming minutes. But let's talk about security, because without security, a lot of other activities would not happen. You've now been in power for over 3 months, 4 months now. What have you found out to be the major cause of insecurity on the plateau?
Thank you, Kayode. Indeed, as we promised, we were going to hit the ground running since May 29th. And we, in fact, did, despite this major energy sapping petition that came against us, which has been a major distraction to governance. We have been able to deal headlong with the issues of security. I can tell you that today there is relative peace and calm on the plateau. We've been able to deploy all kinetic and non-kinetic solutions to the security challenge. What we have discovered essentially is that while there are external forces that are bent on destabilizing plateau, that we also needed to do a lot to reassure the citizenry that we are going to be a government of equity, a government of justice, a government that believes in inclusivity. And these are the things we have tried to deploy. And I'm glad that the people of Plateau are beginning to respond to our leadership. And therefore, there is a lot of community vigilance. There's a lot of inter and intra-community collaboration, as it were. And I can assure you that if we continue on this trajectory, Plateau will return to its name as the home of peace and tourism. And this, we hope, will be sooner than later.
So is it a matter of politics? I recall in that statewide broadcast you put out recently, you described some people as miscreants mistaken for honorables. Those were your words. So is it as a result of politics, the insecurity we have seen? I mean, just on the 10th of this month, there was killings in Mangu local government area. Is it just crime and criminality strictly, or as a result of ethnic differences. What exactly is the issue at hand when it comes to security in Plateau?
Let me say it emphatically for the whole world to hear and know that there is no ethnic nationality on the Plateau fighting another ethnic nationality. What we have had is sheer criminality. What we have had is genocide. What we have had are external elements brought in to be able to unleash terror on our people. Unfortunately, there have been leads that suggest that some of our politicians would have questions to answer about some of these insurgencies because they have been generously linked with some of the perpetrators of this crisis, some of the purveyors of this insurgency, and they continue to make statements, unguarded statements, that incite this criminality and begin to make our people to distrust themselves. And so majorly what we are dealing with is criminality. And I am sure that the federal security agencies are also looking at this clearly. These are people who sometimes would want to use religion and ethnicity to be able to get political oxygen because they know that their fortunes have dwindled. And these are elements we described as miscreants and people who lack honor. We'll continue to go after them, we'll track them, and make sure that they do not become a nuisance to our people.
So let's talk about other areas of governance, and it concerns security, interestingly, but also the economy of your state. Plateau has one of the richest lands, and there's no gainsaying that. And it's general knowledge, not to talk of the minerals beneath the land, the kind of yields that your land can actually get. But there's been this set of recommendations by the National Conference on Sustainable Livestock Reforms and Mitigation of Associated Conflicts, which was presented to the president. You may have seen that meeting. He had the former governor of Kano State. In fact, the committee was chaired by former INEC chairman, Professor Tahiru Jega, and it held in Kano State. I think it was last year. But some of the recommendations involved a creation of a Ministry of Livestock, paying attention to that so it can reduce the clashes, the herders, farmers clashes, as it has been called. And the president spoke to that statement or that report saying that, well, there will be lands acquired for the business of livestock and the rest. And I wonder, because Plateau State was actually mentioned in that report, reading it, is that something you're welcoming, you're hoping to partner with the federal government on, as it says, to reduce insecurity and boost economy?
Thank you, Kayode. Let me be honest with you. I'm yet to read that report. I've only seen excerpts on the pages of the news media. We are going to get the report. We're going to interrogate the report, and we're going to contextualize it, and we're going to give our appropriate response. But let me tell you that we are aligned with the federal government in trying to give emphasis to livestock production. Traditionally, ministries of agri have only dwelled on crops. We have been contemplating that since we came on board to create a ministry specifically to look at the issues of livestock and fisheries and so on and so forth. We believe that that aspect of our economy should be properly developed. Of course, in developing that, we want to ensure that the context in which every society lives is taken into great concern and consideration. And I believe that when the government rolls out this plan, that it is not something that will be pushed down the throat. There will be critical buy-in by all the states and all the communities concerned. And when that is done and we are all on the same page, I'm sure we'll move the nation forward.
Right. So in order not to keep you for too long, because I know that you have the job of governance to do, as you've said in that statement, let's talk about the issue of palliatives, because I know that it's been a major conversation. You speak to the federal government says, well, we've handed it over to the state governor. So tell us about that 2 billion naira grant loans, as the Minister of Finance described it some weeks back. Have they been exhausted by your government? They were meant to serve as palliative package to states. So in the spirit of transparency and accountability, which is part of your social contract, have the monies been expended, and on what exactly?
Oh, for us on the Plateau, Coyote, we have been very deliberate that not to squander the 2 billion anyhow. Therefore, we've been taking our time. We set up a committee to look at the various components of the palliative we need to deliver to our people. Certainly, 2 billion is inadequate. Let's be honest with ourselves. Even 5 billion is not adequate, but only 2 billion has hit our coffers. My commissioner for finance is yet to return from FARC. I don't know what they would have said about that. But be that as it may, we're determined to use the 2 billion judiciously. We're deploying some of it to the education sector. We're deploying some of it to the transport sector. We're deploying some of it, of course, to meet immediate needs and interventions in critical areas like healthcare. And but beyond giving people handouts, which, as you know, a measure of rice or two cannot sustain a family, what we're also looking at is how to be able to use part of it to reflect the local economy. For example, the poultry industry in Plateau State is quite robust. We intend to see how we can ensure it is sustained because it is the main economy of many families on the plateau. And therefore, I've given the people of Plateau State the assurance, and let me reiterate it, that at all times and in all circumstances, we'll be fair, we'll be judicious, we'll be transparent in the administration of the resources committed into our care. So we'll be rolling out the details in the coming week by the grace of God.
So essentially you're saying that the money is still untouched while you work out modalities to expend the monies. Is that what you're saying? The 2 billion is still there?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So let's also talk about the state of pension arrears and outstanding salaries of civil servants in the state. It was a major thing. In fact, you were one of the governors that was said to, that will face major issues with labor. And I think there was a strike when you even came in as governor. So talk to us about the state of those outstanding salaries, pension arrears. Have you cleared them all?
Yes, I'm glad to tell you that when we came on board, we had 4 months salary outstanding, totaling about 11 to 12 billion. And I'm glad to tell you that the payment of the salaries for August have commenced this week. And I'm sure that by next week, we would have substantially cleared August. And so September, we will be able to tackle headlong. We are determined to do that because I have always said it, for me, salary is not an achievement, it's a right, it's a duty, it's a responsibility of government, and we must always discharge that responsibility. As for labor, yes, we met them on strike, but I'm glad that labor has responded to our plea and they have resumed duty. Even though there are still issues here and there we need to address. But I'm sure that labor knows that we can walk the talk, and therefore they are giving us their confidence.
And I think that's a great place to anchor. And there's still a talk about, tourism in Plateau State. Perhaps when next we have you on the program, we can speak about that, because it's always a tourist destination for a lot of people. But the question is Plateau ready for that? We'd like to thank you so much, Your Excellency, Governor Caleb Mutfwang, the Governor of Plateau State. Thank you so much for your time, and wish you the very best.
Thank you, Kayode, for this time. Good evening, Nigerians, and God bless.
Right, we'll go to break now, and when we return, we'll turn our attention to what's playing out in Zamfara State. Nigerians woke up to the story of that kidnapping of students. Plus, Nigeria's extractive industry, there is so much wealth for Nigeria, but some people have been stealing this. We'll dig deep into this in a moment. Let's stay with us.
Politicians make lofty campaign promises, but do they really fulfill them? Are you worried about the quality of governance? Do you know how to hold your public officers and politicians accountable? As a Nigerian, do you even know your rights? Many questions begging for answers, but don't you worry. We've got you covered. We bring you Democracy 101 in 5, your reliable and easy-to-digest guide on citizens' rights, government's responsibilities, rule of law, holding government accountable, and all things democracy. Democracy is more than elections. The real essence of democracy is what plays out after the elections. Democracy is about making government work for you. Watch Democracy 101 every weekday at 7:55 p.m. and Sundays at 8:55 p.m. on Channels Television. Democracy 101 in 5 is an initiative of Yaga Africa with support of the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, FCDO.
For many years, we have secured and beautified your buildings with all security doors. And now, introducing Watson Time German, Israeli, and Turkish doors. Visit any of our factories, reach our distributors nationwide. Think doors. Think Watson Time doors.
In today's world, our lifestyle, both at work and at play, depends on connectivity. Our connectivity depends on the devices that make it possible, and these devices depend on electric power. When power fails, our life shrinks, our work drops, and our joy dips. JRB Solar Energy Systems are here to ensure that we enjoy uninterruptible power, uninterruptible joy. Whether you're running a business, an institution, or just a home you return daily to rest, JRB has got you covered. No project is too big for our super digital inverters, long-lasting batteries, and efficient solar panels. Go. Dream on. Change your world. JRB Solar Inverters, batteries, solar panels, solar street lights, and more. Telephone 0906 752 1111. Email sales@jrbsolar.com. With JRB, the sun's gonna shine on everything you do.
Welcome back to the program. Nigerians woke up to the news that bandits invaded an off-campus student's residence in Sabo Geda village and kidnapped 24 students of the Federal University Gusau in the Zamfara state. Soon after the news broke, top military source close to the commander of 1 Brigade Nigerian Army Gusau revealed that 6 of 24 students were rescued in the forest along Safe local government area. The source also confirmed that several of the bandits had been neutralized during that operation, which is ongoing, while 18 students still in captivity doing the math. And the Zamfara State Governor, Dauda Lawal, has summoned an emergency security meeting to ensure the immediate release of all abducted persons. But let's get more insight. Zamfara State has been infamous for that. We're joined tonight on the program by Honorable Abdulmalik Zubairu, who's a member representing Maru Bungudu Federal Constituency, where that kidnapping actually happened. He joins us virtually from Zamfara State this evening. It's good to have you on the program, Honorable. Well, tell us quickly, what do we know about this latest kidnapping? Well, it's good to have you on the program, but certainly not great for those students who've been other victims of attacks in Zamfara State. So bring it up to speed. We understand that there's been an emergency meeting summoned by the governor, but what do we know about that kidnapping?
Okay, thank you, Kaide. As you all know, this episode has happened around 3 a.m. in the morning, where this banditry entered into almost 3 female hostels in the university and kidnapped more than 24. But luckily enough, by the intervention of the Brigadier General, we are lucky to have 6 of them were rescued. But unfortunately, at this moment, almost 24 were still kidnapped. But I want to praise the Brigadier General because he has done a lot. And even this evening, I spoke with him. They are trying as much as possible to see how they can rescue the remaining 24, which are still in captivity. Yeah.
The remaining 18 or 24, just to get the figures right?
No, 24 are still in captivity, not 18. Only they have kidnapped more than 24, but by the intervention of the Brigadier General, he is able to rescue almost 6 of them, and the remaining 10 people were actually kidnapped at this moment.
Right, so thank you for that clarity. 30 of them were kidnapped originally, 6 rescued, and now 24 remain in captivity. But what more do we know? Do we know the group that carried out this attack? Because we understand that there are different terrorist or bandit groups in that region. What are their demands? What do they want? Do we have any more information on this?
Yeah, as you all know, this is not the first time that this issue is happening in Zamfara State. This one is one of the hundreds that has happened before. And the way we are looking at it in different perspectives, the way people are looking at it, the way me I'm looking at it in a different perspective. These kidnappers is now an economics issue because they normally kidnap people to get a ransom to get money out of it. They are not doing this kidnapping to kill people, no, to get money out of it. And one of the serious situation in that is not the only kidnapper that we are having problem with them. Most of this challenging we are having is not kidnappers, is informants, because they are principal actors in this transaction. Without informant, we cannot have this kind of situation because the kidnappers cannot have access to come to our towns and attack us. Previously, we have an issue of where they normally kidnap, but they normally do it at a town and the villages that are closely to the forest. But unfortunately now, they can come to anywhere. Nobody is safe in our state. They can enter the even state capital and do the kidnapping and went away because of they got assistance from this informant. So the way I'm looking at it is not the major problem is not even kidnappers, but the informants. If the government can address the issue of this informant, I think this kidnapping will also be reduced to a drastic level. And unfortunately, I'm telling you, it's not a matter of killing people at this moment, but it's a matter of how much are they getting in the operation they have done at any moment. Because they normally strike in strategic places or strike in strategic people that they know that they can get at least a huge amount of money. So now basically it's an economic factor of it, not even a killing or whatever it is. No, it's not. It's now economic issue because they are getting money, they are getting hundreds of millions out of this transaction. And they connive with the informant. And what I want to tell you that it's not even the Hausa Fulani that are making this operation now. It's not Fulani. They connive with the Hausa people. Hausa people are the principal actors, not even Fulani. Because without the cooperation of the Hausa people, the Fulani cannot have access to come to our towns, especially the main headquarters.
So are security agencies aware? Are security agencies aware of this information which you just gave? Is that from an authoritative source or just from your gatherings?
No, the security are aware of this, what I'm telling you. They are aware of all this. And we normally advise them and we give them this kind of information that if they want to have a successful operation on this issue of kidnapping, they're supposed to start deciding on how to tackle this issue of informants. If they can have this, so yeah.
Right. So let's speak to, because we've heard again that, you know, mining is also a major source, something that is fueling banditry, insecurity in Zamfara State, which is also another economic angle. And again, we understand that there are communities even close to the capital, perhaps within the capital, that have to pay these bandits monies for protection, levies. Essentially, the bandits have formed a government in those areas. How widespread is this, and what do you expect from government and security agencies?
As you all know, the responsibility of the government is to protect the lives and the properties of citizens, as enshrined by the Constitution. So, mining issue, I cannot believe in that because most of these places where they are making this kind of pollution is not in mining areas. If we are talking of mining, it means it has to go to something else. It's another perspective on the steps. But the operation they are making now is basically getting people that are rich. Others have, especially this university students, that they knew that either their parents are rich or the government has to do one or the other to make sure that these people are getting also. Or sometimes they make this kind of operation because so that they can have at least a relief or a negotiation with the government, especially when government try as much as possible to make sure that they arrested some of their people. So they decided to make this kind of arrest so that the government will come in and make also a negotiation to see that maybe there are people who are released or something else of that. But I want to tell you that as a matter of fact, all what I'm saying as a lawmaker, I know that this issue, it has happened, and unfortunately, the government has to do the needful. We are tired of this. We have stayed more than 10 years in this kind of challenges. And to some extent, they are even coming to attack securities. Unfortunately, if you can recall last 2 months, they came to my village.
Yeah.
Where is the headquarters of the local government, almost 16 kilometers to the main local government, and they killed almost 6 policemen inside a police station. It was just unfortunate. So I sometimes you cannot even imagine that what government is doing to make sure that this thing has come to an end.
Oh dear, it looks like a lot of job, but as you said, that's the role of government. And Zamfara is not an ungoverned space. There's government at various levels. But I'd like to thank you so much for that insight. We wish you the best. Do get back to us if you have information or at least need help in getting across to the right authorities. We've been speaking with Honorable Abdul Malik Zubairu, who's a member representing Marubungudu Federal Constituency, where that kidnapping happened in Zamfara State. Thank you so much for your time, Honorable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kayode. Thank you. I'm good.
Well, it's quite interesting because one thing that perhaps links the first conversation we had with the Plateau State governor and now with Honorable from Zamfara State is that both states are rich in mineral resources. I'm talking Plateau and Zamfara State. Plateau, tin and the rest, Zamfara, there's gold and what have you. So tonight, our next conversation is essentially tying that from the economic angle. And we're digging deep, literally speaking, into Nigeria's extractive industry. It is one that has been shrouded in a lot of opaqueness for the average Nigerian and a lot of corrupt practices which have cost the nation billions of dollars. And it's ironic that crude and other minerals that are meant to be our saving grace have now become a source of economic sabotage. Well, there's a body, thankfully, which is tasked with the responsibility to promote transparency and accountability in the management of Nigeria's oil, gas, and mining revenues. And there have been some shocking revelations made by the body. And tonight, we speak with the head of the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, Dr. Bunaya Orji. His Executive Secretary of NATI joins us live from our Abuja studio. Thank you, Dr. Orji. Finally, we get to have this conversation. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much, Kayode. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the patience.
Indeed. So let's start with the obvious question on the minds of Nigerians, and maybe just collate all of the issues. Just how much, really, has Nigeria been fleeced, cheated out of its God-given resources over the years? If you could just give us a sense of how much we may have lost as a result of corruption and other sharp practices in that industry.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, Nigerians. And let me, first of all, convey my condolences, I would say, and sympathy to the students that were involved in the kidnap issue that you just reported in Zamfara State. I imagine what the parents and the students and the victims are going through. It's not a very terrible experience. So our prayers are with the families, and I do hope our security agencies who are already on top of the situation will be able to rescue them. And we wish this happens like yesterday. Well, I would like to thank you for this invitation, and which you were quite persistent that we must come here to speak to the reports. Before I answer your questions specifically, I do hope you will give me some small time to provide a little bit of a background. The whole essence of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, which NATI is implementing in Nigeria, and which is being implemented in 57 member countries around the world, began as a result of global attention and global search for a permanent solution to resource costs. Resource costs is a situation where countries like ours, blessed with human material resources, rich in oil, gas, and mining, and earns a lot of revenue in these natural resources, find its majority of its citizens in poverty and squalor, ignorance and disease. And this is not peculiar to Nigeria. This is equally like a study done by the World Bank, spreads across most countries in the sub-Saharan Africa. And in these countries, you find exactly the kind of situation that you just reported, unfortunately, in a state like Zamfara, where you have insurgency, you have kidnapping, which is all over the country. Poverty breeds a lot of insecurity. And this insecurity is as a result of lack. It's a result of joblessness, despondency, frustration, and as a result of illiteracy. When people have access to good roads, have access to electricity, have access to water, have access to food, have access to employment and quality life, the security situation is most likely to be very, very well managed, as you see in developed countries. So in 2003 precisely, under the leadership of the then Prime Minister of United Kingdom, the World Conference was held in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and to discuss a finding by the World Bank that countries that are blessed with natural resources always find its citizens in abject poverty. And in those countries, you have resource costs, resource wars, conflicts, you have unemployment, you have social insecurity, you have refugee issues, and several of the kind of challenges we're currently battling with in Nigeria. Examples were given of Liberia, where you had civil wars all about resources. And then Sierra Leone, you have Niger, you have in Chad, you have in Sudan, you have all over most of these countries found in the sub-Saharan Africa. And across Africa, across other parts of the world, the kind of situation you also find in most countries in Southeast Asia, in Asia, and most of the countries also in Europe. So the countries that have managed their resources well and those that have not managed their countries well had to come together under the Global Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. That was the outcome of that World Conference in Johannesburg held in 2003. So Nigeria was among the earliest countries to join this initiative. In 2004, began implementation immediately, and in 2007, supported implementation with a specific law. Now, what do we do? What's exactly unique about the EITI process, and how does it operate to answer the kind of question that you're answering? We depend our operations on public disclosure, believing that when information and data are placed squarely on the public domain, the citizens will have basis of data and information to ask informed questions and hold both companies that receive and manage the resources in terms of revenue from oil, gas, and mining, and the companies that pay this, remit this into account, hold them to account to ask informed questions. And when informed questions are asked, in answer to those questions, reforms happen, and reforms brings about impact. It's a very long story, but I've just tried to cut it short. So our implementation has been very comprehensive.
Right.
Because we became the first country all over the world to back initiative with a law. And our law requires us to comply to international obligations and also to our local requirements. And in our local requirement, we are doing far more than the normal extractive industrial transparency initiative standards. Here, we are required to ask question, how much money did companies pay to government? How much of that money did government actually receive? Did the companies pay what they should pay? Did government receive what it should receive? That's the basis of our intervention. And when this report is out, we place them in the public domain.
Right.
And for the media, the civil society, the legislature, ordinary Nigerians, the government, the companies, everyone, to use that report to ask informed questions. So when I got your invitation and persistence to be here, is also in line with the fact that when the report is produced, there should be adequate engagement, outreach, explanation of public enlightenment or how these reports can inform public debate.
So let's go into the
kind of reforms.
So let's go into some of the outcome, or at least the major findings of that report. And it's ironic for me that even government-owned corporations that participate in this process, it would seem. I've seen that companies have not remitted over $7 billion, NNPC $6.9 billion, 47 companies together over $1 billion. And you sort of wonder, how did we get to that point? Is it a philosophy in governance or public institutions that, well, it is nobody's money anyway, we're not accountable to anyone, so we don't have to render our accounts or open our books? Or is it the lack of structure? What exactly did you find to be the major factor that fuels opaqueness and corruption in that sector, Dr. Orji?
Well, the first is process issues. There are issues of process failure. We have issues of financial regime abuses. We had issues of production, poor management of production in the sector, management of both foreign and domestic exports. We had the issues of revenue generation and proper management of these revenues. But if I must speak to the recent report that we just released, in that report we had we had a total of 69 companies and 12 government agencies. The 12 government agencies are the agencies that either receive, take custody, or manage extractive industry revenue funds, while the 69 companies are the companies that do business in the sector. And in this particular engagement that we had, we were only concerned with companies that do pay royalty in excess of $5 million. And in all this, we were able to find out total revenue generation for the sector for the 2021 report in excess of $23 billion. We also established how many companies were involved, 69 of them, and we also identified the key revenue streams from where all these monies came in. We equally have figures on what was stolen in forms of oil theft, pipeline vandalization, sabotage, and outright stealing of crude. We equally have information on beneficial ownership disclosures, who were actually the beneficial owners of these oil assets. How many licenses were awarded during the period? What quantity do we produce? How many were reserved for local consumption? How many were exported? In terms of subsidy, how much was paid and how much was paid out as subsidy month by month and year by year? And again, we equally looked at the cash call involvements, how much was paid by government as cash call, are there liabilities? We equally looked at the amount of money that companies paid that were not remitted, how much of that is outstanding as liabilities, both on the part of government and on the part of companies. 47 companies were identified, and our own national oil company, the NNPC, has a lot of that liability, arising from either failure to remit royalties paid, sales of equity crude, some kind of deductions they made outside appropriation, and a number of. So it's a very loaded report that has a lot of information. And what we have done was also to make very far-reaching recommendations.
Indeed.
And we have also simplified this report that if you don't have all the time to read this report as it is, I have a full copy here. If you can't have the time to read the entire report, it's also available on our website with all the necessary supporting documents and appendices. This is exactly what the law requires us to do, to publish this report, send them straight to Mr. President, which we have done, send them to the office of the LGF, which we have done, and present them to the National Assembly and the Auditor General of the Federation, as well as relevant government agencies that need this information, to make an informed decision. And because the international development partners we work with, who are the Global Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative based in Oslo, Norway, they equally, it's a standard and a requirement that will publish this report on our website. We've already done so. And investors require this report to make informed investment decisions. And all the global assessments that Nigeria are usually subjected to, either by the World Bank and all the other global institutions, investment institutions, they look at issues like 90 reports to make investment decisions and assessments. So that's why this report is very important.
Okay, and Dr. Orji.
One more important are the recommendations that we have made.
You can land on one of the major recommendations. Can you speak to the major recommendations? There's still a point I need to make as we wind down, but just quickly, the major recommendation for that.
Yeah, one of the major recommendations is for the monies that are being owed as liabilities to be recovered. Nigeria is looking for money. The government is looking for money every day. And we do not think for us to go and borrow would be wise when we have some windows to recover for monies that are outstanding. If those identified that are owing have paid, they should show proof. That's one area. The other area are in the areas of regulation.
Right.
Implementation of the PIA in its letters and forms. Because that PIA, 90 was in the forefront. It was our recommendation. And if you implement the PIA, most of these issues, the reforms that are ongoing now should be fast-tracked.
All right.
There are also recommendations we've made.
Just as we wind down because of time, and I think it's important to make this clear that a lot of Nigerians should actually get on board, study these reports, and hold government accountable because it's a joint work. But you had also revealed earlier that crude oil valued at over 16 trillion naira has been stolen in the country since 2009, and that the culprits include high-profile members of society, security agencies, and host communities that had been reported. And a lot of Nigerians saw that and they were shocked, particularly the fact that those responsible most times are not brought to account. They don't face the law. Is there a recommendation for that? Is there information available for government to be able to pursue those people and ensure that they don't just remit those monies that Nigeria has lost, but at least they answer for that crime?
Well, we have a new government currently, and the interest they have shown so far to us is very encouraging. We are working very currently now, reviewing the recommendations with the Office of the SGF, and we are very encouraged with the support we are getting. We're equally very highly encouraged by the support we're getting from the National Assembly and from leading civil society organizations, development partners, and in fact the media. So we do know that our job is to provide this information in the public domain, and the job of all the government, the civil society, and the industry are to look at this report and see how the recommendations we've made can be implemented. And that is very, very key in the whole of this process.
Indeed. There's so much to discuss, but I do hope we can take this up another time. But we have to wrap up right now. And just to give context to Nigerians, Nigeria is just doing above 1.1 million barrels a day, as opposed to the 1.74. Oil is at 94, or $95. So imagine if we're performing optimally, no one is stealing our crude. We'll be earning a lot of revenue, but perhaps that's an appetizer for the next conversation we'll have. I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Bunaya Orji, the Executive Secretary of NATI. It's been good having you on the program tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Good night.
Well, that's where we anchor for tonight, everyone. We're back on Sunday with Sunday Politics. I'm Kennedy Okikulu. Good night.
Unwritten pages of extreme opulence lies a well-tailored art of contemporary living. Comes another breathtaking architectural masterpiece, a waterfront property masterfully created by a visionary team of world-renowned architects crowned with premium fittings. Leonardo
is about to offend every iota of mediocrity. With Fendi, the Leonardo now sells at the 25% price off. Forget every notion of luxury you've ever known. Own the Leonardo.
Get in on the action with Betano, your exciting destination for thrilling sports betting. Enjoy an award-winning experience with amazing betting options, cash out, and missions, as well as other features. Join now and get a welcome bonus of up to 100,000 Naira. Betano.ng. The game starts now.
Our new toothpaste, Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection.
Why are we changing our toothpaste?
Because with Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection, I can be sure your teeth are cavity-free.
When you brush daily with Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection, its expert formula locks natural calcium in our teeth and helps protect them from cavity. Colgate is the world's most chosen toothpaste.
Colgate locks calcium in.
Keeps cavities out!
The new Colgate Mini Pack is now available at just 300 Naira.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your